In 1983, the original Star Wars saga concluded in spectacular fashion with Return of the Jedi, the third entry in the original Star Wars trilogy. After saving a frozen Han Solo from intergalactic gangster Jabba the Hutt, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Lando Calrissian, played by Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Billy Dee Williams, are reunited, where they join forces with fellow rebels on a dangerous mission to the moon forest of Endor, in order to take down an Imperial base so they can destroy a second Death Star, which is in construction. Luke comes face to face with Darth Vader, played by David Prowse and James Earl Jones once again, and comes to terms with the fact that Darth Vader is indeed his father, all while the Emperor, played by Ian McDiarmid, tries to entice him into the dark side. All while on Endor, the rebels team up with the Space Care Bears themselves, the Ewoks, the tribal natives of Endor, in order to finally take down the Empire, in this exciting and heartfelt third act of a perfect trilogy. I can't believe that this is the first Star Wars movie that I've ever made, and that I haven't done one yet. I don't know why, but I just would have thought that I would have made a Star Wars episode a lot sooner. And this thing is loud. So let's look into 10 things that you didn't know about Return of the Jedi. The Star Wars movie, which, in my opinion, deserves way more credit than it does in modern years. So, let's check it out. Wait, isn't this thing meant to be green? Number 10, original title. After the success of the second theatrical Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back, which ended on a cliffhanger, the concluding Star Wars movie very quickly went into production, where Star Wars' creator George Lucas teamed up with scriptwriter Lawrence Kasdan, who previously co-wrote The Empire Strikes Back, as well as Raiders of the Lost Ark. The script was based on ideas and story outlines by Lucas himself, and its original title was Return of the Jedi. Although Kasdan felt that Return of the Jedi was a title that was just lacking that extra punch, and was a fairly weak title. So to add more excitement and flair, Lucas changed the movie's title to Revenge of the Jedi, as the word revenge invokes more intensity and proactive energy. However, it was quite late in the movie's post-production that Lucas realised that the idea of revenge goes against the Jedi Code, as Jedi don't seek revenge, so the title had to be changed. And he's right. In Return of the Jedi, Luke is in no way seeking revenge. If anything, he's trying to bring out the good in his father, Darth Vader, and redeem his evil, almost like salvation. So Lucas reverted back to the original title of Return of the Jedi. But as this happened quite late, there were some issues, as a teaser poster drawn up by Drew Struzan features the title Revenge of the Jedi, as did early trailers and even some toys which were set to be released. So die-hard fans who are watching the development of Return of the Jedi may have been confused, as shortly before the movie's release there was a sudden title change. Number 9. The Search for a Director. As with The Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas chose once again to not direct this Star Wars picture, but to solely focus on the story and screenplay. Also on board this Star Wars movie was new Star Wars producer Howard Kazanjian, who was an executive producer on previous fellow Lucas production Raiders of the Lost Ark. The producer of the previous two Star Wars movies was Gary Kurtz, but he didn't return to produce Return of the Jedi, as he didn't like the script, finding it too commercial. When it came to finding a director, Lucas's number one choice was his friend and fellow filmmaker Steven Spielberg, but Spielberg couldn't join the production as the Directors Guild prohibited it, due to a clash with Lucas. The next big director being considered was David Lynch. Yeah, imagine a weird and surreal Star Wars movie directed by David Lynch, but he turned it down because, well, to be honest, he just wasn't interested. Next up, there was body horror director David Cronenberg, from one surreal David to another. But ultimately, Cronenberg chose to direct Videodrome instead. So Lucas finally chose Welsh director Richard Marquand, which is an interesting choice as prior he had directed 3 low-key movies, one of them being a Beatles biopic called The Birth of the Beatles in 1979. So Marquand went from the Fab Four to Battle of Endor. And it is said that due to never having worked on a special effects heavy movie, that Marquand struggled a little bit with directing duties, of which Lucas himself was frequently on set to lend a hand, along with even doing some second unit work on the account that the movie was going over schedule. But Lucas has maintained that Marquand worked well with the actors and that he was genuinely a really nice guy. Number 8. Change of lightsabers. Return of the Jedi features a brand new lightsaber, a green one, which makes sense as Luke lost the other lightsaber during his battle with Darth Vader at the end of The Empire Strikes Back. So it makes sense that Luke would construct a new one, and why can't it be green? And ever since Return of the Jedi, green lightsabers have been common in the Star Wars universe. However, if you look at the movie's poster, we see that Luke Skywalker is presented with a blue lightsaber. In fact, all the posters are shown with blue lightsabers. Now isn't that weird? How is it that we got a blue lightsaber on the poster, whereas in the movie, it's green? That's not a small detail, that is actually quite a big screw up. Well, this anomaly is because originally in the movie, Luke's lightsaber was meant to be blue, just like the previous one, as you can see here with these shots from the movie's trailer. And I think back then it was perfectly simple. The baddies had red lightsabers and the goodies had blue ones. However, when adding the lightsaber effect to the scene where Luke is fighting Jabba's goons in the deserts of Tatooine, it was felt that the blue colour of the lightsaber just got lost in the scenery and didn't stand out. So it was decided to make it a safer green colour instead, to make it stand out more. And yeah, when you see that scene with the intended blue lightsaber, it does kind of get lost in the scenery. So I can understand them going for a green one. So for that reason, the green lightsaber was born. As for the movie's poster, well, the Japanese poster did actually correct the colour issues and change Luke's lightsaber to the proper green one. Number 7. Planet of the Wookies. So Return of the Jedi features the introduction of the Ewoks, cute teddy bear looking tribal species of the planet Endor. Although at the time people thought the Ewoks were very cute, in later years they have become the subject of contempt to some Star Wars fans, who see them as a shift of Lucas taking Star Wars into a more commercial direction, with them being designed to appeal to kids and sell toys. However, originally the Endor tribe were primitive people who could fly, till Lucas changed it to a planet of Wookies, just like Chewbacca. But it's said that for budgetary reasons, it was decided to not have a planet of giant Wookiees, but rather shorter Ewoks. That and it may not have worked on a narrative level because of Chewbacca. Also, making a planet of Wookiees may have been risky, as some people still probably had bad memories of the Star Wars Holiday Special. There were other ideas that didn't make it into the final film. Originally, Yoda wasn't going to show up, till it was felt that his character was needed to confirm to Luke that Vader is his father. And in the end, we were going to see Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin not as Force ghosts, but to actually come back to life and actually join in the Endor celebrations with the other characters. And at one stage, the ending was to have more of a spaghetti western style ending, as we see Luke Skywalker walk into the distance on his own, till it was decided to finish off the trilogy with a happier, upbeat ending, rather than seeing a worn out, tired Luke walking off as a sad lone warrior. Number 6. Filming locations. The shoot for Return of the Jedi started in January 1982 and lasted till May of that year. A great deal of the movie's action takes place in a forest setting. George Lucas wanted the movie to have forest scenery as he wanted the natural world to clash with the technical world of the villains. It also gave Return of the Jedi its own visual identity, as Star Wars had dry desert landscapes, Empire Strikes Back had cold icy ones, and so Return of the Jedi had natural green forest ones. The forest scenes of Endor were filmed on private land at Smiths River, California, as well as Grizzly Creek Redwood State Park, also in California. While filming on location, the production went under the title of Blue Harvest, with the tagline, "Horror Beyond Imagination." This was to keep away the press and fans, so they wouldn't think that it was a Star Wars movie being made, but some random horror movie. the horror movie disguise was also used if the production needed local services, so they wouldn't charge them a ridiculous fortune. Filming the Tatooine scenes took place at Yuma Desert, California. Supposedly, finding filming locations wasn't easy, on the account that Lucasfilm wasn't a union company. And finally, interior sets were built and filmed at Elstree Studios in England, just as with the previous 2 Star Wars movies. Number 5. Harrison Ford wasn't happy with the ending. There was doubt as to whether or not Harrison Ford would even return to Return of the Jedi, as unlike Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, he wasn't contracted to return for another sequel. And the fact that 2 years earlier he also starred as Indiana Jones meant that he was now a bigger name, and thus worth more and also unlikely to return. After negotiations, Ford did agree to return, but Ford requested that his character be killed off at the start of the movie's 3rd act, in a scene of self-sacrifice during the raid of the Imperial base, which would lead the audience in suspense as to not knowing who will survive, believing that if Han Solo can be killed off, then anyone could be. However, Lucas was against this idea. According to previous producer Gary Kurtz, this is because Lucas thought that he couldn't sell toys based on Return of the Jedi if one of the heroes is killed off. I know I'm not the only one who has said this, but over the years there's been this feeling that Ford may not really be a fan of his Han Solo character, and felt that Han Solo should die. And, well, he finally got his wish. Look, toys aside, I think that narratively, it makes sense to not kill off Han Solo, because a huge part of the ending of Empire is the suspense if Han Solo will be alive after being frozen in carbonate. So had he been killed off, we would have gloriously seen him survive and return, only to come back very quickly and get killed off again. Maybe if The Empire Strikes Back didn't have an ending where we were already questioning Han Solo's mortality, then killing him off in Jedi might have actually worked. But to me, narratively, it doesn't fit having this whole, is he gonna live, is he gonna live? Oh, he lives! Oh, he died. Do you see what I mean? Speaking of actor quirks associated with Return of the Jedi, English actor Alan Webb was originally cast as the Emperor, but he had to drop out when he became seriously ill, to which Ian McDiarmid replaced him and gave a memorable performance. And R2-D2 performer Kenny Baker was going to play the Ewok Wicket, but suddenly came down with food poisoning when it was time to film his scenes, to which a young Warwick Davis replaced him in his first acting job. And here's some early test designs for Jabba the Hutt, when they were trying to figure out what to make him look like, until they eventually went with the giant slug beast monster that we ended up with. Number 4. Deleted scenes. So there were several scenes that were removed from the final film, and although I understand these scenes being cut, especially due to pacing issues, some of them actually do have some pretty iconic looking imagery, including a scene set at the start of the movie, where Darth Vader arrives at the second and unfinished Death Star, and goes into his chamber to use the Force to telepathically reach out to Luke, who is currently in a cave on Tatooine, in order to encourage him to join the dark side. And I love this image of Luke. He looks badass. We also see Luke put together his new lightsaber, and the scene ends with R2-D2 and C-3PO leaving the cave to head to Jabba's fortress, which is where the theatrical cut then kicks in. Another deleted scene takes place after the gang flee when they destroy Jabba's sail barge, where they then head to the Millennium Falcon and Luke's X-Wing, where a hectic sandstorm occurs, where we have this really nice scene between Luke and Han, where Han thanks Luke for rescuing him, and you can see from this shot the great chemistry that Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford had. This was apparently a really big scene to film, and was probably the most ambitious scene that was cut, given all the effort there was to shoot it. But yeah, look, this scene does slow everything down, as this is the part of the movie where the story starts to form. And the movie just flows better with the theatrical cut, which gets to the plot quicker without having to go through a sandstorm. There are also extended scenes of the rebels invading the Imperial base on Endor, and there are actually some pretty good stunt work in this scene. And that general who greets Darth Vader at the start of the movie, there are actually more scenes with him, where he's ordered to destroy Endor, but you can see that he has second thoughts, and really doesn't want to go through with it. I guess this was a way of humanizing his character. But his character doesn't really go anywhere, well, to the best of my knowledge at least. So I can understand removing this subplot, as there would have been hints of a redemption without the redemption. There are also still images of an alien from Jabba's palace, known as Lightbulb Man, who was played by a member of the crew, and was a stand-in for an illuminating alien creature which was to be added in post, but never was. So all we are left with now is photos of the infamous Lightbulb Man. And this shot of Luke holding up a skull and staring at it. Probably no doubt just about to ask, to be or not to be. I got the feeling that this shot may have been cut from the scene where Luke battles the Rancor monster, which did indeed feature skeletal remains and a skull. There are probably tons more deleted scenes that are still yet to be unearthed, and probably will be released from the Lucasfilm vaults in time, as is the case with other Star Wars movies, even the more recent ones. Number 3. Rare promotional film. So as we all know, the legendary Warwick Davis, who would go on to star in Willow and several Harry Potter movies, starred in Return of the Jedi as Wicket, the Ewok. He was just 11 years old at the time. In 1982, a mockumentary/promotional movie was filmed called Return of the Ewok, which follows young Davis in a fictionalized version of how he got the part of Wicket, while also showing behind-the-scenes footage of Return of the Jedi. It was filmed during the filming of Return of the Jedi and features appearances from Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and David Prowse. And interestingly, in the short film, Return of the Jedi is referred to as its original title, Revenge of the Jedi. Although it's always good seeing rare behind-the-scenes footage of an original Star Wars movie, the short film was abandoned and never completed. Over the years, it's become the stuff of legends and highly sought after. There were a few screenings that took place during the 90s in England, like at Elstree Studios, to celebrate Star Wars Day, of which some camcorder recordings from the screenings did start to circulate as bootleg copies, but the film quality was very low. Return of the Ewok has never had an official release of any kind, where it continues to live on as a rare and curious anomaly within the Star Wars fandom. Number 2. Test screenings led to the creation of a sound company. During an early test screening of Return of the Jedi, George Lucas and other fellow employees of Lucasfilm were horrified with the sound quality of the movie, as certain sound effects and musical scores by the ever-reliable John Williams couldn't be heard, particularly Leia's theme. Despite being edited into the movie, certain sounds and musical cues were just nowhere to be heard. A lot of this was actually down to the sound quality of movie theatres of that time, which could often make the sound muffled. This caused Lucas to create the company THX, which was named after his first theatrical movie, THX 1138. And it was a new sound system designed to improve the quality of sound so movies could be heard the way that they were intended to be heard. The sound quality isn't the only thing that'll change with Return of the Jedi, as over the years there would be several changes made to the movie, particularly the 1997 special edition release, which changed the funky song that was heard at Jabba's palace to a really hip 90s sounding pop song, which came complete with new footage being filmed and new CGI effects. Yeah, look, to me, this scene just stands out like a sore thumb and just doesn't go with the rest of the movie and really feels unnecessary. And more importantly, it doesn't enhance Return of the Jedi. I never saw Return of the Jedi as a kid and saw that musical number and thought that it needed to be more 90s and more funky with more CGI. Other new special edition footage includes adding a beak to the Sarlacc creature, of which I always thought looked more menacing when it was just a weird alien hole on the desert surface. And of course there was the removal of the Ewok song, Yub Nub, which the original movie ended with it being replaced by a much grander and epic song called Victory Celebration. The scene even showed a variety of planets celebrating, as well as planets we hadn't seen yet which were going to feature in the prequel trilogy. Jump to the DVD release in 2004 and more changes were made, where actor Sebastian Shaw, who played Vader unmasked, had his Force ghost replaced with Hayden Christensen, who played younger Anakin in the as-mentioned prequel trilogy. Now, the theory behind this is that Vader has reverted back to Anakin as he was before he was lured to the dark side. But this makes no sense, as Vader had already been reverted back to Anakin just before he had died, when Luke unmasked him. So technically, his older appearance is how he should have looked when he became a part of the good side of the Force. It just looks weird having a younger Anakin with a much older Obi-Wan. And finally, the Blu-ray edition, where Vader can now be heard screaming no before he saves Luke from the Emperor. Something which has caused much uproar and contempt in the fandom community. Look, I'm not going to bitch about George Lucas's changes. Everyone else has. But to me personally, in my own opinion, I think the changes were unnecessary. And being old school myself, I do prefer the original cut. I thought it was perfect and didn't need all these things changed and added to it. In 2015, there was a documentary movie called I Am Your Father, which was about Darth Vader performer David Prowse and his long feud with Lucasfilm. And in the documentary, the scene where Vader was unmasked was refilmed with Prowse in the part. But this scene itself didn't end up in the documentary, probably due to copyright issues with Lucasfilm. But I wonder if this filmed scene will ever be shown, because just out of sheer curiosity, I would love to see it. Number 1, it was the biggest movie of 1983. Because, of course it was. I mean, it's Star Wars. There was great anticipation to finally see the conclusion to the original Star Wars saga, of which devoted fans had to wait a painful 3 years to see what became of the cliffhanger ending of The Empire Strikes Back. To which most movie theatres had many determined fans lining up for up to 6 days to get in and see the movie, demonstrating the sheer love and devotion that fans had for Star Wars. And supposedly on some occasions, Star Wars loving couples who were waiting in the long queues even got married while waiting to finally get in the theatre. That's really romantic in a Star Wars kind of way. Return of the Jedi was released in May 1983 and made over $475 million, making it easily the highest grossing movie of that year, going against fellow third entries including Superman 3 and Jaws 3D, as well as 2 James Bond movies. The movie also got positive reviews, with it being felt that Return of the Jedi was a happy and satisfying ending to the Star Wars saga and wraps everything up nicely. A review in Time magazine even claimed that Return of the Jedi is better and more satisfying than The Empire Strikes Back. The only niggle came from the acting, where, if you can believe it, Variety said that Mark Hamill is not enough of a dramatic actor to carry the plot. Wow. But the responses in general were positive, and Return of the Jedi won an Academy Award and was nominated for a further 4. However, in later years, some fans would come to see Return of the Jedi as being the weakest link in the original trilogy, often citing the creation of the Ewoks as being something of a letdown, and a representation of Lucas going in a more kid-friendly direction in order to be more commercial and sell toys. But to me, the true heart of Return of the Jedi is Luke's dilemma, where he's being mentally challenged by the Emperor and Vader to join the dark side, by enticing him to strike his lightsaber in anger and vengeance. You feel his turmoil and temptation, while having an internal battle to do the right thing and save his father. To me, this psychological struggle is what makes Return of the Jedi. It's almost Shakespearean, and Hamill's performance is really on cue. And when I think of Return of the Jedi, this is what I think of, not the cute Ewoks. Which is why, to me, Return of the Jedi is a splendid conclusion to the saga, and is truly a space opera masterpiece. On a movie-making note, it may not be as grand, or as rich, or as polished as Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, but it does live up to those movies, and is a great third act in a 3-part story. So, to conclude, the Force is definitely strong with Return of the Jedi. To me personally, the Star Wars saga ended in 1983, and everything afterwards has kind of paled in comparison. Now, if you're a fan of the Special Edition trilogy, or the prequel trilogy, or the sequel trilogy, or whatever Disney Plus is currently doing, then that is absolutely fine. I wouldn't argue that or try to take that love away from you. And it is okay to disagree. Some people like strawberry ice cream, some people like chocolate. And that is okay. We don't have to agree on everything. But to me, everything post 1983 it just hasn't really been to my taste. Which is why I think Return of the Jedi is a perfect conclusion to a fantastical science fiction space story about family. Yeah, a spectacular tale of family long before the Fast and Furious movies. Anyway, I'm Minty, and remember, a Jedi never seeks revenge. See ya!